I am Mariette Sidibe and this is QTV News coming to you live from our studios on Caraba Avenue. Thanks for joining us. And now, here are the main local news headlines. $1.8 billion is owed to the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation by government and state-owned enterprises, according to a 2019 assessment report. The Gambia government has lost revenue worth more than $800 million since its introduction of duty-free on rice imports into the country, according to the finance minister. Over $1.7 million worth of suspected cannabis was seized in the West Coast and the North Bank regions from suspected drug traffickers by the Drug Law Enforcement Agency of the Gambia. The General Manager of the Gambia Ferry Services on Friday announced the redeployment of the Kunta Kinte, Kanilai and Johe ferries at Banjul Bara after successful completion of maintenance work. In international news, today, the 11th of February, marks the 7th International Day of Women and Girls in Science, set aside to break the gender gap that prevails at all levels of science, technology, engineering and maths. And in sport, we hear how Gina Bass got on in her first race since the Olympics. Those were our main headlines. Now the news in detail. A 2019 assessment indicates that more than $1.8 billion is owed to the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation by government and state-owned enterprises. This, according to Finance Minister, who was answering to questions from National Assembly members. Momodo Lamin Choi reports.
The Finance and Economic Affairs Minister updates the National Assembly on the extent of the debt owed by government institutions and state-owned enterprises to the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation administered state pension fund, which was uncovered following a 2019 arrears verification exercise. The NAMS get this update following a question by the National Assembly member for Upper Salem, Ala Jimbao.
We were able to verify that the total amount of money owed to Social Security by central government and state-owned enterprises is $1,839,888,000.
Through the Finance Ministry's Directorate of Public-Private Enterprises, a payment plan was established and signed. The Finance Minister gives a breakdown by central government and state-owned enterprises of the amounts owed to the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation.
This amount owed by SOEs is $1,418,311,000. Owed by government to Social Security is $421,577,000.
Though the state-owned enterprises have been paying their debts according to the payment plan, there remains a significant outstanding balance. Only 2 out of the 7 SOEs have settled all their debts.
Payment plan, and I said we do put a lot of pressure on them. When they are going to settle it, we don't know. But the pressure from the ministry is, we've been very consistent. We write to them, we make sure when we go to their board meetings, we do remind them that Social Security is pensioners' funds. So we cannot afford not to be paying them.
The NAM for Serekunda, Halifa Sala, who is also the chair for the Assembly's Public Enterprise Committee, asked the Finance Minister whether he is aware that the debt is considered by the Social Security as an existential threat, and without addressing it, the whole system is in jeopardy.
And is the issue really willingness to pay or mandatory obligation to pay? Otherwise, sanctions would be effected through the courts.
I think here we will have to work with the National Assembly. I think the committee, the PACPEC, the government, the ministry is willing. The reality of the day is that the contingent liability, anything that deals with Social Security, eventually is the government of the Gambia. Believe me, we give them very tough time. That is why consistently, not only write to them, but we call them to these meetings. And the meetings are, most of the time, to tell you, they are not friendly. They are not friendly. It's very, very, very tough, and we will continue. We are aware and very sensitive to the issue of pensioners' funds.
The Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation was established in 1981 through enactment, and it is mandated to provide social protection and shelter for all Gambians. With this huge amount owed to it, lawmakers seek from the Finance Minister swift and robust measures to address the problem. Mahmoud Lamin Choi, QTV News.
The Finance Minister has informed the National Assembly that government has lost more than $800 million in revenue since its introduction of duty-free levy on rice imports into the country. The government's duty-free levy on rice import was meant to bring down the cost of rice. However, since its introduction in 2018, rice prices keep soaring. Mahmoud Lamin Choi reports.
The taxpayers continue to pay for the cost of skyrocketing price of rice, even though the financial burden of paying duty was lifted from the shoulders of the rice importers. The National Assembly member for Ilyasa asked the Finance Minister, Mamburinjai, about lost government revenue since it lifted duty on rice importation.
Rice was lifted in 2018 is $837,773,960. $960.
The policy meant to reduce the cost of rice has failed since its introduction in 2018. The National Assembly member for Badibu, Alhaji Jawara, asks the Finance Minister about the possibility of a change of policy direction on the duty-free for rice imports.
We have no plans to reverse it. What we intend to do is to make sure we are self-sufficient in rice production. And that's the intention of the government, and the Ministry of Agriculture is working very hard. But as of today, we have no plans to reverse it. We'll encourage the rice importers really to go down, because that was maybe an informal agreement, but it's unfortunate that they did not come down on it.
To find a solution to the cost of essential commodities, most significantly rice, the Gambia government plans to attain self-sufficiency in rice production by 2025. As announced by President Adama Barrow during his last nationwide tour. The head of state also made similar remarks in his inauguration speech this year.
The target for the new government is rice self-sufficiency and food security for all. To maintain these, we will have to open up industries, upgrade the country's technology status, and process our produce while creating jobs in the country.
The ambitious vision for rice self-sufficiency will be the long-term solution to affordable prices for the staple food in the Gambia, whose 2 million plus population's per capita rice consumption is 177 kilograms. This is according to the Agriculture Ministry's pre-harvest report for the 2019-2020 cropping season. Mahmoud Lamin Chai, QTV News.
Drug Law Enforcement Agency of the Gambia officials have seized more than $1.7 million worth of suspected cannabis in the West Coast and the North Bank regions from suspected drug traffickers. The suspects are 5 Senegalese nationals and 1 Gambian. Babukar C has the rest of that story.
All 4 of the suspects involved in the cases in the West Coast region are Senegalese nationals residing in Majijam in the southern Senegalese region of Casamance. One of them was taken into custody while 3 others are currently at large. The incident happened on the 8th of February on the outskirts of Jakoy Paima from Casamance heading to the river crossing point. On the 10th of February 2022, 2 suspects were taken into custody in the North Bank region for possession of suspected cannabis. One of the suspects is a Senegalese and the other a Gambian. Usman Sediba, the public relations officer of the Drug Law Enforcement Agency, said the traffickers have found a new route from Casamance entering the West Coast region.
The operatives that are stationed within the West Coast region registered another significant seizure, which is also landmark in a sense that at a single go, where more than 500 big bundles of suspected cannabis sativa is arrested. In total, we are talking about more than a ton of cannabis being seized, 546 big bundles of suspected cannabis sativa. We're relating to a case of about 6 people. 5 of them are Senegalese and 1 is a Gambian national. In the West Coast region, the operatives seized about 546 big bundles of suspected cannabis sativa that weighed more than 480 kilograms. In the North Bank region as well, the operatives there seized about 40 big bundles of suspected cannabis sativa that involved about 2 people.
PRO Sediba said some of the Drug Law Enforcement Agency of the Gambia operatives sustained injuries during the operation. A manhunt has been launched to track down the 3 suspects currently at large.
So presently, one of the suspects of those who were arrested in the West Coast region is in custody. This is at a specific river crossing point. We will not be specific with the name because this is a new route that they've been taking, and the officers will continue to be on alert. 3 of the suspects are at large, and there is presently a manhunt to trace them. And it is interesting to note that all the 4 suspects in the case within the West Coast region are Senegalese nationals, and they are all resident in Casamance. So one of the suspects, who is 18 years old, is in custody. What they do is they use this specific crossing point. They were with their motorbike as the means of conveyance. They were intercepted by the officers, and during the pursuit, some of our officers sustained injury, but these are some of the occupational hazard that comes with the job.
He calls on the public to help the operatives with information, as this will make their work easier.
Estimated street value of these drugs is more than $1.7 million. That is, you're talking about $1,771,000. So therefore, they are in custody, but the matter is still not done because, as we said, 3 of the suspects are currently at large. 1 is in custody, and investigation continues. Even the most developed countries, with all the technological development, with all the infrastructure that they put in place, they rely a lot on information. You see something that is not normal, you see something that is suspicious, share the information.
The suspected drugs were transported on motorbikes, 2 of which had no registration number plates, while the other 2 are registered with Gambian numbers. Babu Karsi, QTV News.
We will now go for a commercial break. When we return, we have more local news stories. Do stay tuned.
Check out the all-new Tigo 8 at S-Pass Motors. Call 3522-222 or 353-2222 for more information. Sherry.
I am the light goddess. Everything I touch turns into light. I am the light at the end of the tunnel, and my technology is the answer. I am the happiness in your life. I keep you connected, and I am Q-Power. I am Q-Cell. I am Sunyabos. We innovate, others follow. Call 111 for more information.
Welcome back. The General Manager of the Gambia Ferry Services, a subsidiary of the Gambia Ports Authority, on Friday gave assurances of his commitment to better service delivery as he announced the redeployment of the Kunta Kinte, Kanilai and Johe ferries at Banjul Bara after a successful 6 weeks maintenance work. Aliu Sise reports.
The management of the Gambia Ferry Services said the engine replacement work on the Kunta Kinte ferry, which had interrupted service at the ferry crossing point in the past 6 weeks, is to improve the service quality of the ferry, which was commissioned in 2017. Flanked by his senior management, Lamin Jawara, General Manager of the ferry service, reveals that the 3 engines have been replaced on the Kunta Kinte ferry with new ones, putting it in much more better condition. In addition, the ferry is also given a facelift. Aside from the Kunta Kinte ferry, Jawara added that the Johe and Kanilai ferries, together with one provincial ferry, the Nyani Ferry in Barajali, all underwent maintenance and are now in operation.
With the refurbishment works done on the Kunta Kinte, now we are going to extend the service of the ferry service. Formerly, it was from last ferry from Banyun 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock from Bara, but now this will be extended. Now last ferry will be 11 o'clock from Banjul and 12 o'clock midnight from Bara. What this means is that some people that are coming from Senegal would now be able to catch the last ferry in time. And the other service we are introducing, but still on trial or in trial, is scheduled hourly departure. We started this, but it's still on trial. But once it's been finalized, we will make a public pronouncement about this.
He further reveals new services through a mobile app that his office intends to roll out to ease travel for people. This app can help travelers know ferry schedules and track ferry locations, among other features.
We have some new services that we also want to inform the public about. One of these is the Gambia Ferries app. This app contains a lot of features. We have the ferry tariff inbuilt in the app. The ferry schedule is also in the app. And then there's a map where you can track the ferry real time. Also, all announcements that we have will also be uploaded in this app. Today we can say that the app is available publicly on the Google Play, and it can be downloaded. It can be downloaded by the general public. Apart from that, the other service we want to introduce is the e-ticketing system, but that will be launched in March 2022. We are currently working in finalizing the app, and after that it will go through some testing, then before deployment sometime in March.
Jawara asks for understanding from the public during such service interruptions, as the safety of passengers remain a priority despite the huge economic loss incurred during the maintenance period. According to him, plans are on to secure new ferries, as both Johe and Kanela vessels have been in operation for over a decade. Yankuba Mane, communications officer at the Gambia Post Authority, emphasized the importance of regular maintenance to better serve the public. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliu Sise.
Residents of Latrikunda Sabiji have complained about the lack of running water in their community since 2001 and are calling on the government to intervene. Ajibintu Drame visited the community, and this is her report.
Residents of Latrikunda Sabiji explained that they have been enduring water shortages since 2001, and 20 years later the situation is worsening. Philip Anthony Silva, a resident, says the water shortage has become severe and a burden, most especially on women and children. He added that they have contacted NAWEC about the problem, but no action was taken by the water authority.
The risk involved is that the highway is very, very risky. You have too many vehicles plying, and the drivers don't even give way to these women that do use the road to cross the road and then go. Because when you are to go to Nawek, you have to cross the main highway. So it's very, very risky. You see women and children carrying buckets, others with wheelbarrows. So the driver doesn't even give them way to pass. So it's very risky. In fact, I was even told that the other time a driver knocked somebody with a bucket of water.
Some of the residents with boreholes are the Good Samaritan providing water for the neighbors. Others must go to Nawek sub-branch, which is about 50 meters from the Birkama highway to get water. Mr. Silva further explains.
We are taxpayers and we are Gambians. We cannot be in our own country looking for water, as if we are in the desert. We are not in a desert. The government should move heaven and earth and see to it that we have water, potable water, as soon as possible.
Nene Gassama, a Latrikunda Sabiji resident, explained. No one living here will tell you that they are having running water in their homes. No one. Everyone is struggling to get water. If you do not have someone to fetch for you, what will you do? You need to spend money. I know what I spend every month because I can't be without water. At the end of the month, NAWEC used to bring the bill, but they had to stop that 3 months ago when we all came together to complain about the water crisis. The government should help us. We are tired. Fatou Jame is one of the fortunate ones with the borehole and helps supply water to the community. She says she and her children struggled for years before getting the borehole.
And what is very annoying, every day you watch on news, you see they put NAWEC project 10 million, 5 million, 6 million, and we are not included in the millions or in the projects. It's very sad. Every month they bring bill. Every year KMC bring lempo for you, you pay, and you are not having water. It's not fair.
We spoke to Per Silva, the public relations officer of NAWEC, about the situation, and this is what he has to say.
What is happening is, until now, to be honest, NAWEC has not done any remedial repairs as to the damage. So the complaint keep on coming and coming until it had reached PURA. You know, PURA is our regulators. PURA lodged a complaint to NAWEC, and NAWEC had to get some personnel from PURA. They went to the site to make an assessment of what was happening there.
Water is essential for life, and this kind of water crisis has been a long-standing problem in most communities in the Gambia. Meanwhile, for the residents in Latrakunda Sabiji, the wait goes on for an improvement in their situation. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News.
In international news. Today, the 11th of February 2022, marks the 7th International Day of Women and Girls in Science. The day is set aside to break the gender gap that prevails at all levels of science, technology, engineering and maths STEM. Jenna Basonko takes a closer look at the significance of the day.
The theme for this year's International Day of Women and Girls in Science, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, Water Unites Us, focuses on women and girls as agents of change, especially towards the fulfillment of the UN Sustainable Development Goals of clean water and sanitation. For women to become effective agents in the fulfillment of that SDG, they must venture into research, and women are typically given smaller research grants than their male counterparts. Women represent only 33.3% of all researchers, and only 12% of members of national science academics are women. Aside from the low percentage of women in research, they also have shorter and less well-paid careers. The narrative is improving in the Gambia, as during the recently concluded first Global Robotics Competition, the Gambia was represented by an all-girls team. This was a deliberate decision from the team to encourage more girls to venture into STEM-related fields. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres had this to say on the occasion. He stated that the structural and societal barriers prevent women and girls from progressing in STEM disciplines. He called on member nations to develop an environment where women and girls can achieve their full potential and become leading scientists and innovators. Reporting for QTV News, I am Jenna Bosonko.
And in sports. Gambia sprint sensation Gina Bass got a false start at Mondeville meeting in France on Thursday. The African 200 meters champion was in her first competition since the Tokyo Olympics. Our sports reporter Momodu Gajaga has been following her progress, and he now reports.
The Mondeville meeting would have been Gina Bass' first athletics competition since the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. Prior to the run, Bass was tipped among the favorites to win the women's 60 meters race, as she was second in the entry list with a timing of 7.11 seconds. Gina is preparing for the IAAF World Championship and the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham later this year. However, in this race, she made a false start and can no longer take part in the race. Umudu Gajaga, QTV News.
Before we end, here is a recap of the main headlines. $1.8 billion is owed to the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation by government and state-owned enterprises, according to a 2019 assessment report. The Gambia government has lost revenue worth more than $800 million since its introduction of duty-free on rice imports into the country, according to the finance minister. Over $1.7 million worth of suspected cannabis was seized in the West Coast and the North Bank regions from suspected drug traffickers by the Drug Law Enforcement Agency of the Gambia. The general manager of the Gambia Ferry Services on Friday announced the redeployment of the Kunta Kinte, Kanilai and Johe ferries at Banjul Bara after a successful completion of maintenance work. In international news, today, the 11th of February, marks the 7th International Day of Women and Girls in Science, set aside to break the gender gap that prevails at all levels of science, technology, engineering and maths. And in sport, we heard how Gina Bass got on in her first race since the Olympics. That's all we have for you in this edition of QTV News. Join us tomorrow for more news. Thank you for watching.